Okay, year nine, good day to you, depending on the time you're coming to this video. It's our last one this week on practicing writing skills. And because we're moving towards our final outcome of a piece of writing today, it clearly says here, I'm not writing. I'm using creativity to help my brain stay healthy. Okay, guys, it is an indisputable fact, proven time and time again by study after study, that any creativity, journaling, creative writing, is an amazing tool to help your brain and your mental health stay healthy. It's a really good way to exercise those parts of your brain to help you exercise your creativity, your imagination. So that's what we're doing today. We're not simply writing, we're using creativity to help our brains stay healthy. Okay, so if you need a title today, practicing writing is an ongoing title for us, but also just give yourself a minute to make sure you've got the materials from the essay, because we are going to be looking at that piece of writing you did at the end of the essay's lesson as to inform what we do today. Okay, so I just want to make you aware that we're using this knowledge organizer to inform what we're doing today. So it reminds us of that relationship between what we've done in previous lessons and what we've done this week. This week, though, we focus from reading fiction to actually creating a piece of fiction, a tiny piece of description, but it counts as fiction because we're being inspired by an image to create a story, to create to create an imaginative description. Okay, and again, that challenge to use certain vocabulary as we write. Okay, so we started with this idea of how do we become better writers by creating a firm foundation. And really, that means we are not writing an entire story. We're not here writing a novel. We're not here writing pages and pages of an entire narrative that has a clear and distinctive kind of narrative structure. We are zooming in on a really good foundational paragraph. Now, just to convince you of the importance of those kind of firm foundations and to lead into our starters today, I'm just going to share with you. Okay, now this is a book or an extract from a book called In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Now, this was an incredibly famous novel. Now, this was actually a non-fiction novel because Truman Capote was actually investigating a rural town where there was a murder. And he wrote this beautifully descriptive non-fiction account of what had happened. Now, it says here, the last to see them alive. Now, the reason I wanted to share this with you is as we write today, there might be ideas in this that can inspire you. We're going to use some ideas of this in our retrieval task in a minute. So this is just to kind of remind us of that beautiful relationship between what we read and what we write. So just feel free to listen and to let this story kind of, or this opening to the very famous Truman Capote novel wash over you. Okay? And you'll see a link between this opening and our own choice of images. The village of Holcomb stands on the high wheat plains of western Kansas, a lonesome area that other Kansans call out there. Some 70 miles east of the Colorado border, the countryside with its hard blue skies and desert clear air has an atmosphere that is rather more far west than Middle West. The local accent is barbed with a prairie twang, a ranch hand nasalness, and the men, many of them, wear narrow frontier trousers, Stetson, and high-heeled boots with pointed toes. The land is flat and the views are awesomely extensive. Horses, herds of cattle, a white cluster of grain elevators, rising as gracefully as Greek temples, are visible long before a traveller reaches them. Holcomb, too, can be seen from great distances. Not that there is much to see, simply an aimless congregation of buildings, divided in the centre by the main-line tracks of the Santa Fe Railroad, a haphazard hamlet bounded on the south by a brown stretch of the Arkansas, pronounced Arkansas River, on the north by a highway, Route 50, and on the east and west by prairie lands and wheat fields. After rain or when snow falls thaw, the streets, unnamed, unshaded, unpaved, turn from the thickest dust into the direst mud. At one end of the town stands a stark old stucco structure, the roof of which supports an electric sign, Dance! But the dancing has ceased and the advertisement has been dark for several years. Nearby is another building with an irrelevant sign, this one in flaking gold on a dirty window, Holcomb Bank. The bank closed in 1933 and its former counting rooms have been converted into apartments. It is one of the town's two apartment houses, the second being a ramshackle mansion known, because a good part of the local school faculty lives there, as the Teacherage. but the majority of Holcomb's homes are one-story frame affairs with front porches. Down by the depot, the postmistress, a gaunt woman who wears a rawhide jacket and denims and cowboy boots, presides over a falling apart post office. The depot itself, with its peeling sulphur-coloured paint, is equally melancholy. The chief, the super chief, the El Captain go by every day, but these celebrated expresses never pause there. No passenger trains do, only an occasional freight. So I love that description. Now, this is clearly more than the paragraph we're aiming to write today, but it brings together, okay, and it inspired my photo choices. That image of the wheat plains that we've been looking at this week, it mentions the grain elevators. Now, it does create that kind of movement description where we start with the big panoramic description, and then it zooms in to describe the village itself of Holcombe. And then it zooms in and it changes direction again in that final paragraph to actually focus on a character. Now, if we were being ambitious and if we had more than 1 week, we potentially could build a description that also goes through those stages. But we're going to be zooming in our own writing today and just creating that panoramic description of place that we see in that first paragraph. Okay, so we're going to use this to do some retrieval. So it says here, our first task, nouns and appositives. We're going to see 3 sentences, and for each sentence, you're going to be challenged to pick out some information. Now, you can either list this in your book, circle it on the screen depending on your IT skills, but this is what I want. I want you to read this sentence, and I want you to find me 3 proper nouns, 2 common nouns, and an appositive that explains the wheat plains more fully. So we're looking for 3 proper nouns, 2 common nouns, and the appositive that explains the wheat plains more fully. So guys, are you ready? So all you need to do is pause your screen and complete the first task. Off you go. Okay, lovely people, let's look at the answers. So, she says, right, brilliant. So 3 proper nouns. Remember proper nouns, so clues, look for those capitals. Absolutely, we've got the name of the village, Holcombe. We've got Kansas, so it goes from the name of the village to the bigger state that it's a part of. Now, interestingly, the Kansans. So that's the name given to the people that live in Kansas, just like we're Plymothians or Tall Pointers. Okay, lovely. There's your 3 proper nouns. Right, 2 common nouns. Now, there's more than 2, so any of these 3 gets you the right mark. Village, wheat plains, and area. Now, this was the bit, if you've got this is lovely, because we only introduced the positives yesterday. So what was the appositive? What was the word, the noun or noun phrase that explains the wheat plains more fully? Now, look, here it comes. See that little comma? It begins with A. So we've got the wheat plains of Kansas, and then it's renamed as a lonesome area that other Kansans call out there. Now, quick check. Remember, if we can remove that appositive, the sentence should still make sense. The village of Holcombe stands on the high wheat plains of western Kansas. Brilliant, that works. Now, if we remove high wheat plains of western Kansas, the sentence should also still work. So, the village of Holcombe stands on a lonesome area that other Kansans call out there. Brilliant. Okay, so next warm up. Exactly the same process. Look at this sentence. This time, though, I want some different stuff. I only want 1 proper noun, 4 common nouns, and this time, yep, a little throwback. Can you find the simile? So press pause and have a look. Okay, beautiful people. So 1 common noun. Now, again, it's hidden here, but use that visual cue of the capital letter. Okay, I know we do get capital letters at the beginning of sentences, but proper nouns, there it is, Greek. Okay, Greek is being used there as a proper noun to introduce the idea of a Greek temple. Okay, 4 common nouns. Now, again, you've got more than 4 here, so just tick off the ones if you're correct. A traveller, the land, the views, horses, cattle, grain elevators, temples. Any of those count as those 4 common nouns. And did you find the simile? Yes, brilliant. He uses this beautiful simile actually to describe the grain elevators as rising as gracefully as Greek temples. There we go, that beautiful kind of simile working there, as gracefully as Greek temples. Now, that grain elevator was in one of the photos, so you might have chosen that image. You might want to magpie that simile, those silver kind of like industrial buildings in the middle of the wheat field. So the sun came through the clouds and reflected off the silver cylinders of the grain elevators, rising as gracefully as Greek temples. You could use that in your own writing later today. Okay, third and finally, just to warm us up, we're going to see 1 more sentence. Okay, this time 4 common nouns and the appositive that's used to explain the postmistress more fully. Okay, off you go. Press pause and find your answers. Okay, so 4 common nouns. Now, all of these, okay, are right answers. The depot, the postmistress, woman, jacket, office. Now, denim, sorry, is also a common noun, so any of those. Now, I like this appositive. It shows us that appositives are definitely used to explain ideas more fully. So we've got this introduction down by the depot, the postmistress. Now, just a minute, if we skip that middle bit, presides over a falling apart office. So remember our check for an appositive. It comes after the noun, so there's our postmistress, okay, and it tells us more, but we can remove it, or we can remove the noun itself and the sentence will still work. So down by the depot, the postmistress, a gaunt woman. Gaunt's this lovely word that means thin and kind of angular looking, like something's haunting her. Wears a rawhide jacket and denims and cowboy boots, presides over a falling apart office. What a wonderful image of a postmistress. Okay, now, down by the depot, the postmistress presides over a falling apart office. That works. Now, if we get rid of postmistress, down by the depot, a gaunt woman who wears a rawhide jacket and denims and cowboy boots, what a lovely outfit, presides over a falling apart office. Brilliant. Okay, so that's our little warm-up for today. Now, we know we've got our plan, and we know yesterday we did our first little bit of description, but our first efforts are never our end point. So we're going to look at 2 other areas today that we can use to just upscale and revise our writing. So this was my bit yesterday. Okay, with that real effort to use appositives. Hopefully you've got 3 sentences that are doing a similar thing in relation to your image. But that means that yesterday we looked at this first level of sentence writing, appositives, which are an amazing way to add information and complexity, which we want in our writing. That gets us higher grades, information, descriptive information, and complexity. But we're going to look at these 2. Now, these 2 we can do in one lesson because they're quicker. Okay, so we're going to be looking first at subordinate conjunctions and then sentence types. So this is a real simple change that we can make to our sentences to elevate the quality of our sentence. So really for this, I just need you to listen. Okay, subordinating conjunctions are a word, or conjunctions in general, sorry, are words or words used to connect 2 clauses together. Although, because, or when. So we were using because in that very first lesson this week to connect ideas, to offer explanation. Now, a subordinating clause is part of a sentence that adds additional information to the main clause. So it's actually about complexity and information adding, which is what we want when we describe. Sometimes the hardest thing with description is we say what we see too quickly. We don't take time to describe it, to add information and complexity. And that's what all these sentence level skills are doing. So subordinating conjunction is simply the word or words that's used to join one subordinating clause to another clause or part of the sentence. And just to the left here, you can see a bank of these conjunctions. Okay, so we're going to put this into practice very quickly, just do some warm-ups and then use it to improve our writing. So it says here, all I want you to do is pause it a minute and circle the subordinating conjunctions in each sentence. So this is proof that this wonderfully respected writer, Truman Capote, okay, uses all the devices we've used. We've seen him using appositives, okay, to describe that postmistress, to describe the wheat plains, and we can also see him using subordinating conjunctions. So in a minute, you're just going to pause and circle the conjunctions that he's using, okay? The village of Holcomb stands on the high wheat plains of western Kansas, a lonesome area that other Kansans calls out there. That's your first sentence. Then it says, after the rain or when snow falls thaw, the streets, unnamed, unshaded, unpaved, turn from the thickest dust into the direst mud. Now, for your subordinating conjunctions, you'll find the right ones in this bank just to your left. So all you need to do is look at that bank after, although, as far as, if, in case, and if you see one of those words in these sentences, circle them. But could I just say, okay, we're not going to get time to look at it today, but I absolutely love this layering that he does in this second sentence. And I love this repetition, unnamed, unshaded, unpaved. Whoa, I love things like that. When writers do that, there's a lovely simplicity, but it's all about creating a really layered sentence of description. And that repetition works. Now, this is a Greek trick, okay? He's stolen this or been inspired by Greek rhetoric and the way the Greeks kind of set some rules in place for our writing in the past. It's an absolutely beautiful moment. The streets, unnamed, unshaded, unpaved. Oh, I love it. Anyway, pause, find your subordinate conjunctions. Okay, gorgeous people, absolutely right. So we've got that working in that first sentence and at the beginning of this other sentence after. So that reminds us subordinate conjunctions